those that are watching in the archive, I'm Trevor Beck. I am hosting this session here on one of these lovely Ramu events. And we're all very excited to talk to Kathy Neiman about her experience on the Great Canadian Bake Off. Randy is here with us as well. He's kind of acting as a tech backup because I have some connection issues. So we're just making sure that if something goes wrong, Randy will jump in. If you have any questions, there is a Q&A function. I believe if you're on a mobile device, you have to scroll down to the apps and you'll find the Q&A there. Please just use that for asking questions, not as a general chat function. We're just going to keep it to strictly the question stuff. And we will look at the questions after Kathy's finished her presentation. That's about it. Randy, anything I need to worry about? Are we good?
I think we're good.
Okay, so you and I are going to mute ourselves. I'm going to pin you, Kathy, so that we can get your screen and whatever you're sharing. And do you want to start right away? You do whenever you're ready to go ahead and screen share. Otherwise, it's just all you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'm just going to go into screen share now. I did a little presentation that has a lot of visuals and stuff like that. So just let me get in. Okay, here we go. So thank you very much for tuning in. A lot of people, the last theater night, a lot of people were asking me questions, and I thought, why don't I just do a little presentation? And also, if you know of anybody who is passionate about baking, I would highly recommend that they audition for the show. It was quite the experience, and I had a great time. And so let's just get into it. So for those of you who don't know me, I worked at MacEwan for just about 30 years in FFAC, or Performing Visual Communication Arts back then, in a number of programs. And I was lucky enough to retire in 2021, I believe. Time's a blur, but anyway. I grew up on the family farm, studied art, did a lot of stuff over the years, including running my photo studio, and I've always been interested in a multitude of things, things like crafting and art. So this is just some of the stuff that I do, I still do, and pardon me if you hear some dogs barking, that's another part of my life. And I have a little guy that barks at birds. So more recently, I'm into quilting, more modern quilting. And this is just an example of some of that stuff. My big passion is my dogs. I run agility with them. I was at a trial yesterday from 6:30 in the morning till 8 at night, lifting all the heavy equipment and stuff. So I'm sufficiently sore, but it's one of my passions. And actually, Daisy and Sizzle were paws dogs at MacEwan for a number of years. So, and of course, my passion for cooking and baking. I would consider myself a better cook than a baker. And until I applied for the show and was on it, baking just was something I did, but it wasn't like I was crazy about it, like my colleagues on the show. I felt kind of bad when I got there because they lived and ate and breathed baking, and I just felt like I was a hanger-on sometimes. But anyway, so baking, I've always done it. Of course, growing up on the farm, my mom used to say to me from about 8-9 years on, she would say, what would you rather do, clean the house or bake for this coming week? I come from a large family of 5 kids, mom and dad. And so we always had to have baking in the house. And so naturally I chose baking because I didn't want to clean the house. So that's kind of where I started, about 8-9 years old, with simple stuff, cookies, and then more complex stuff. I have to say off right from the start, I'm not a fussy baker. I'm a puffed wheat girl. Puffed wheat squares, I'm not opposed to making those pudding cakes, from the 70s, those bunt cakes. Things like Sex in a Pan, My friends absolutely love that. And if you don't know what that is, you can Google it. It's, yeah. So that's my kind of baking. I'm not fancy. So I kind of felt like a fish out of water at sometimes. So how did those experiences equip me to be on the Great Canadian Baking Show? Well, I think some of the biggest things are confidence. Growing up on the farm, you did everything. My dad used to treat me like one of the boys, gave no consideration that I was a girl. So I had to fix things. I had to jump right in, and it gave me the confidence to just, in further in life, just jump right in. And I had, I don't question whether I can do something, which is kind of, maybe it's a little bit foolhardy, but it served me well thus far. I'm not going to actually complain. So I just went into it saying, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be the lady that takes puffed wheat squares, chocolate cakes. I can't be anything other than that. And so I decided to audition for the show. Actually, I have to say that my good friend Brenda Philp kind of challenged me, dared me. She's a follower of the show too. And she said, oh, why don't you apply? And I just went, sounds like kind of fun. So I had no expectation. It was the first time I had applied. And the audition involved you to either do it online or bring 6 items into downtown Edmonton in March and meet with the producers. And yeah, so what I did was at 5 in the morning or 4:30 in the morning that day of the audition, I got up early and I decided to make my bake. And they want you to bake something that shows them who you are. And so I got up at 5 in the morning and started to bake. I had to be there by 9. So it was a little bit of a pressure cooker because if it wouldn't turn out, I'd have to do it all over again. So it's a test for the show, right? So I went and took out my agility wagon. I packed up my bakes, which were hot. They were still warm. And I packed up 2 different sets of dishware, 2 different kinds of serving platters, silver cutlery, tablecloths, napkins, because I wanted to show my bakes in the best possible light. And if you know me, I'm from art and design background. And so the styling of the food is just as important to me. And I was the only one that came with a wagon. When I got into the audition, there were about 50 people in the room. And it was predominantly, I want to say, I have to be careful how I say things. Sometimes I just say things. Lots of 30 to 40-year-old Lululemon wearing yoga pant women with messy buns, fake nails, fake eyelashes, and boxes of cupcakes. And I've never seen so many cupcakes. And I just thought, maybe what I did bake was good because I made something savory. And I thought there's going to be tons of cookies and cakes. And maybe the producers would like something savory. Oh, slide that you see is Larry Harris, who used to work at McEwen, was on season 5, I believe. And Megan from Leduc, who's standing next to me, was on season 2. So I ran into them in the tasting room. Oh, you can hear my little dog bark. Anyway, what did I make that said something about me? I made sausage rolls because I kind of thought the producers would be sick of sweet food by about 10:30. And I staged it like that. I also made mango chutney. So I made the pastry from scratch and I made the meat filling from scratch and served it on china plates. I took in at least 1.5 dozen And within 5 minutes, the crew had eaten all of them. Yeah, so that's what I did. And it turned out so well that they asked me for a second audition, which was a bake along. I had to pimp out my kitchen with cameras and all of that. And it was a cookie base. And so this kind of echoes one of my bakes on the show, if you happen to see it. If you haven't, I'll give you instructions on how to see it later. But this is just kind of how I approached the process. And I'll talk a bit about this process. So they called me about a week later and said, hey, you made it on the show. And the first thing that popped into my head was, whoa, I never thought I'd make it this far. Should I actually do it? And I had a number of friends that said, if you don't, you will regret it. And we're never going to speak to you again. So I said, okay, well, yeah, I'm always up for a challenge. Let's do this. So hence started the contracts, intro packages, timelines, post interviews, info meetings, all of that stuff. But more importantly, the baking briefs. So every week we got a new brief. And if you're aware of the show, there is a signature bake, which is the first one. Then there's a technical. That's a blind bake. You don't know what you're making. They just give you the recipe and all your ingredients on the day of the shooting. And then there is your showstopper. So you have your signature bake and your showstopper that you prepare and test, research, all of that before you actually go. So we left for Toronto. We all met in Toronto on May 16th. So from early April to May 16th, that's when I did all of the prep. And that's when you have to come up with your recipes. They have to be original. You can borrow stuff, but you have to tweak it. And that's often why you see unusual flavors. You want to give something that they've never tasted before, or you have to do something that's a standard that is really solid, really well done. So anyways, that happened from early April to May 16th. I'm going to talk a bit about my process. I prefer to do simple things. I don't do a lot of French patisserie. I have an adventurous palate, but I haven't done a lot of exploratory baking. Let's just say that. My process is a lot of research, drawing sketches and lists, and I did numerous test bakes and tweaks. And then we submit our recipes, and I'll have to say that I almost did all-nighters. It felt like being back in university to get the recipes in on time. And one of the things that I did have a close group of friends who knew that I was going on the show, because they asked you not to let a lot of people know. So my general friends didn't know, but I had a small group of friends that I had invited over, and we drank a lot of wine, and I got them to test the bakes, and they gave me good feedback on them and confirmed stuff I needed to change and all of that. And that was so much fun, to have that kind of group going. So thank you very much for those people who participated. It was great. So prep for the show. This is an example of prep. So I did drawings that had notes on it, and those notes and then the recipes we could take into the tent with us. So we didn't have to memorize anything. Heaven forbid. My memory is like nil. So we could take photograph references, all of that. This is the format. So this was Cake Week on week 1. And
Kathy?
Signature, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Right now on our screen, I see prep for the show, my process. Have you actually moved to a different slide?
Yes. Oh, do you want me to try and go back?
Sure. Let's see what happens. Okay. Prep for my show still. Oh, there we go. So week 1, Cake Week. Is that what you're trying to? There we go. Pattern roll.
Yeah,
Okay,
pattern
thank
roll.
you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but in any time that happens, because I'm not sure why it freezes. But so this is a 2 hour. So this just shows you kind of what I do. That was week 1, the roll cake. This now I changed slides. It says showstopper top forward cake. Hopefully you can see that, and it's a rainbow cake.
Not yet. It's still on pattern roll.
Okay.
Okay, now we're forward cake. I think if you move 2 slides ahead and then 1 slide back, it seems to trick it.
Okay, well then maybe I'll have to remember that. Trevor, if you want to just keep your mic on
Okay.
and let me know if it doesn't go forward, and I'll tell you when I'm going to go forward. So this is another kind of example. So this was based on Phyllis's chocolate cake, a friend of mine's chocolate cake that I've been using for like 30 years. But I swapped out black onyx cocoa powder, which is truly black. For those of you who bake, sometimes you test you have visual cues that tell you when something's done, like browned. This is almost impossible. You have to either take the temperature of the cake or whatever. So these are just some of the challenges, but that just shows you these are all bakes that I did at home to fully test things out before we go. Okay, I changed to slide to leaving for Toronto.
Nope.
Okay, let me go there and go back. Leaving for
Toronto. No, it works.
Hey, so I think I'll have to do that from now on. So
Okay.
anyway, all my airfare and hotel and some of the materials that we use are paid for by the show, so that we can experiment and test our recipes. I went with my suitcase, and then I had another suitcase with all my baking stuff in it. And you can see the one slide, the pressurization of the airplane. All of my food coloring bottles exploded. Not exploded, but leaked. And it was a heck of a mess. I upgraded my cabin in the flights because they paid for the flight. I thought, I'm just going to pay $75 more and go first class. But so I had extra leg room and free drinks and everything. What I didn't anticipate is that every mother with a kid that was just under 2 years of age was thinking the same thing. And so on all of my first class flights, I had screaming 2-year-olds sitting next to me, and I would have been better in coach. It was whatever. Stay focused and drink Caesars. Okay, so leaving for Toronto, prep when we got there. Yep. We stayed in Markham. And the show was actually taped at the Canadian Film Centre in Toronto, and it's beautiful estate grounds. You can see that by watching the show. We met the bakers, crew, all of that, got our schedules, basic prep for stuff. And there we are on the steps of the baking show. See that?
Yep.
Okay, and so we got a chance to mingle and meet each other, and I'll tell you the first week, boy, these people on the show, the contestants, they are intense, driven, focused, kind. What you see on the show is what you get. They are truly wonderful people, and like we've stayed in contact, and they're actually 4 of them are actually and somebody from a previous year is coming to visit in May long weekend. They're coming to stay at my house. Anyway, so there we are. The tent, the infamous tent. It was amazing walking around the corner on this estate and coming face to face with the tent. It was so surreal. And when we walked in, it was out of this. And even to this day, when I think about it, I don't think that it was real. I know I can process it, but still, it feels like it didn't happen. All right, so the tent. Can you see that slide with the black and white photos?
Got it.
Okay. On the floor shooting, what you see on camera is not what happens. This is typical day. The photos you see are actually of the finale. So if you can imagine more people in there and more bakers, tons of technical staff on the floor, and behind that back wall, people that help out. And everything, total professional, from the production crew, to the culinary producers, to the story producers. There is a camera on you at all times, and a still camera that's moving around, a story producer that's asking you questions, drawing information out, and you have to stay focused on your baking while you're doing this commentary. And I found I got tripped up a couple times because I was cracking eggs on the first bake, the Boston cream pie. My filling was too watery because I cracked an extra egg because they disrupted me. That's just stuff you have to deal with. So you have to stay focused. I don't know how I did it, but I have a mind of a squirrel sometimes, but it was good. So cake week 1, I did the roll cake, Boston cream pie, and the top forward cake. And it's based on, the first roll cake is based on my love of quilting and free motion quilting. That pin cushion is actually made out of marzipan, and the little pin needles were silver spaghetti, edible silver on spaghetti. And yeah, so that was week 1. Week 2, we moved into bread week, and it was cornbread. The technical was rosca de reyes, and then the bun show, what I call the bun show, was pistachio papaya matcha buns and pierogi buns. And so that just shows you some of the prep work that I did. Whoops. Going back, do you see the lovely hunks of pork flesh on that slide for bread week?
Yep.
Okay, so this is just I'm going to play a video now. I don't know if it's going to work, and if it doesn't, we'll just move along. But it's me actually making the pork rinds, or the chicharron, that are crunched on top of my bread. So when we went to the hotel, we had a full kitchen outfit with all of the equipment we needed so that we could practice on down days. We usually taped for 2 days or 1 day, then we had a day off to practice, and then we did our showstopper the next day. Sometimes it was over a weekend where we got 2 days off, but they roughly shoot 1 episode every 4 to 5 days. So this is a video of this chicharron. You might not hear anything, but I prepped the pork fat, and it's like a credit card. It's like plastic. You have to dry it out. And then when you put it in the hot oil, can you see that video?
Yep, it's expanding.
Good. Okay. So then what I did was I took the chicharron out and tossed it with cayenne pepper, salt, and I probably made like a big, huge bowl of it. And the production crew loved it. And yeah, I left it there for them to munch on afterwards. Okay. So I'm going to go on to the next slide, which looks like Kathy's flour tower. And this was the buns that I made for the showstopper. I did matcha buns, which are a green dough with a poppy seed filling. And then I did a yellow turmeric bun with a purple potato filling that would basically be everything that would go in or on pierogies. And then I made that stand at home and took it along. And this was kind of interesting because one of the judges, Kyla, came by and got on film that her mom makes the best pierogies. And then she said, no stress. And I said, well, it's bad enough I'm in the tent, never mind you're going to compare my stuff to your mother's pierogies. And in the end, she kind of got teary-eyed because my filling and my buns reminded her of her mother's pierogies. So, and then there's a image there of me working the green dough, and that's matcha. It's just flavored with matcha tea. So it's kind of like a grassy flavor, and it worked well with pistachio and sesame seeds. They didn't cover that bun on the show, but all of my testers said that that was a better bun than the pierogi bun. So go figure. Yeah. All right. So we're just going to go on. I'm going to rifle through some of this cookie week. We had to do embroidery cookies, and then the showstopper was a cookie, again, theme. If you see the teapot here with the little flowers and the dog print and everything, that's what I had hoped to do. That was my pattern at home, but each cookie took me over 20 minutes, so I was never going to get it done in the time frame because we only had 2 hours or something, so I had to switch gears. None of my bakes I got done at home in the time that they allotted, partly because my dogs would want to go out or I'd get a phone call and I'd have to stop the timer and all this stuff. But often they want you to be able to test your things in the time period so that you know what you can do to switch gears if you're going to be running out of time. So I abandoned that, and I actually went with a different cookie design. And it was more of a free-flowing watercolor technique, which is more my style. And I think this looked way better anyway. And it was different. So can you see the teapot with the purple cookies?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So, and I wanted to pay homage to my friends that come over to quilt. We always do these kind of proper teas with china. I pull all the mismatched china, and everybody makes finger foods, and yeah, and so we do this quite regularly, and I wanted to pay homage to them for that. Yeah, then we go into the showstopper, and this was a take on my first bake I did. They said I could do it again, and if you can see the black and white base, one squid ink with white sesame, miso flavored cookie, and these are savory so they're more like a cracker, but they still are like a shortbread. And what I did was wasabi flavor cream in between the layers, and then I cured my own salmon lox and made roses. They allowed me to cure the salmon and slice it ahead of time because that alone could take an hour to slice it, or maybe about 20 minutes to slice it. But I had to form the flowers and everything while I was there. And I think I might have finished with like 2 minutes to spare. And so there's the finished product. I had a little mishap when I was putting it together. The white cookie base broke, but because of the design of the bake, I could hide it with all of the stuff that went on top, and it was no big deal. So the tent can become very, very hot. And it did get up to 28 degrees while we were baking because you got the ovens and then you got Toronto heat and humidity. And I was trying to think of ways to help maintain the structure of that. And if you watch the show, you'll note that a lot of people ran into problems that week because of the hot tent. Their frostings and stuff melted and they lost shape. I decided to incorporate these little pillars of cucumber to hold it up so that even if the cream cheese started to wilt, it would still maintain its shape. So they made note of that and said it was kind of brilliant. And I thought, yeah, that's the design problem solving coming into play. So that week was a good week for me. I got Star Baker, and that shocked me. I never would have, because I thought there was a lot of really good cookies in, and yeah. So by this time, we're getting to know each other really well. It's hot in the tent, and we're busy practicing, and we're going on to week 4, which is harvest week. And the first bake was a P-Day, which is like a pizza. Whoops. Is it on harvest week now with the boat-shaped things?
No,
Pardon?
still seeing cookie week. Still at cookie week. There we go. Harvest
Okay.
week.
So you're seeing my drawings that I put together, and these were so much fun to do, and it kind of got my head in the zone, and that was all part of the prep. And there's some prep notes on the side, and that's actually my tester at home. The showstopper was Ohio Star Quilt Tart, and this was a 3-hour time limit. There's an image of my practice one at home. Grace, our producer, said, you got to amp it up a bit because that's probably not good enough. And initially my crust was pistachio. And so she said, you have to amp it up. And me being the torturing myself, I decided to do 9 tiles, make them way smaller. So do you see the Harvest Week cricket bag?
Yes.
So the other thing that I did was I decided to incorporate roasted crickets. And this came out of a conversation I was having with my brother and sister-in-law. We grew up on the farm eating beef, and but over the years, my brother and sister-in-law become more health-wise and environmentally conscious, and they are almost vegetarian. Well, my brother's almost vegetarian. We were talking about alternate protein sources and how we are going to have to shift our thinking. And so I did a little research, and I thought, hey, that's kind of cool. Why not try roasted crickets? So I ordered some. They taste like slightly burnt pecans. And they're not bad, like really. If they weren't so darn expensive, I think I'd buy them just as, kind of a fun thing. But they're about $18 for a little bag like that. And I thought, the show can pay for them. So I decided to substitute some of the pecans or nuts for crickets, and they bake up almost exactly the same. And it was quite interesting. So there's my tart. I increased it from 4 tiles to 9. It was wickedly hot that day. I was sweating all over everything. The Bruno did not want to taste the crickets when the camera was on them, and I could tell from, he wears an earpiece, and there's a feedback to a control room where the head producer is, and I could tell that they were feeding him a line that said, you might want to taste that. We want to see you taste it. And he turned around, then he came back and he said, well, here, okay, I'll taste one. Are you happy? And so everybody in the tent was laughing, and Bruno was such a good sport about it. He's a lovely person. Kyla's a lovely person, the other judge. Anne and Alan, the hosts, Alan, you see him there. They are so funny. Their scripted stuff is cute, but their off script is even better. And a lot of that doesn't make it into the show for time's sake, or could be a little risque, a little double entendre, but they are improv people, and they had us in stitches. And certainly when things got tense in the tent, they offered us such comic relief that it was wonderful. So Harvest Week, surprise, guess who got Star Baker again? You see the slide with Star Baker. I had mentioned that the tent was super hot. A lot of people's bakes didn't congeal properly. I anticipated that, and I went with a chocolate ganache, which solidifies in like 10 minutes. in the fridge, and then a really thin layer of gelée, which is just jelly, and it worked out. I played it pretty successfully. Anyway, that's my tart. So in the end, that Ohio Star tart was based on a quilt block that I do, and you'll see here that star tart is now going to be a table centerpiece. So those are little quilt patches that you can see. Got it, Trevor?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, good. All right. So it's making its way back into a quilt. Huh? Okay. So meanwhile, back in Alberta, there's my mom with my dog, Tonka, my brother, and I have good friends that took my brother and sister-in-law. My good friends took my dogs for the time that I was away, but I had never been away from them before, ever. I was missing camping. You can see me with the campfire down there, and I have a little grandniece that I see regularly, and she's just at a lovely age, and I was missing them. And so I was getting a bit homesick, and yeah, and a little bit tired. You know how it goes. All the rest of the participants were at least 8 years younger than me, 9 years younger than me, and it's a big difference. I'm not old and decrepit by any stretch. There have been older people on the show, but talking about old school, week 5, the slide here, old school. Our first bake was a toaster pastry, and then our showstopper was a kitsch cake. And this is my toaster pastry. Again, my elite group of friends who I had over got to taste this and gave me some really good feedback. It is actually Cabanzola, which is kind of like a combination of brie and blue cheese with maple bourbon drizzle, pears, and walnuts, toasted walnuts in the inside. And I've never had toaster pastry like Pop-Tarts, so I just decided to put the spin on it. It's kind of a savory bake, again, savory. And it's with puff pastry, not pie crust. I don't like pie crust. I don't like things with pie crust. So I decided to do puff. This won't fit in a toaster, and they looked different than everyone else's. But the stuff on top is candied bologna, and that's my nod to old school. Growing up in the 70s, on the farm, my dad loved bologna, and I always remember having fried bologna with pancakes and the taste of the crispy bologna soaked in pancake syrup. And so that's a flavor from my childhood, and so I decided to incorporate that. So something very elevated with something very mundane or kitschy, I thought. So anyway, that's that old school. And then was the cake. So we're now on to the cake I did. And this is a lemon cake and cherry chip. And this is a picture of the creation I made at home. And so it is 6 layers of cake, highly adorned, and it's big. It's a big cake. One of the things, I tend to overdo it. A lot of people's cakes were 2 or 3 layers, and of course I have to go 6 layers. And Grace warned me about this. She's the culinary producer who offers coaching and all of this stuff. And she said, do you have to do 6 layers? And I said, well, I won't get the effect if I only do 4 or whatever. And she just said, okay, well, good luck. But anyway, I really pushed myself. And that is, whoops. Do you see with the judges, the slide there with the judges?
No, we're back to the old school.
Okay, let me go ahead.
There's the judges.
Okay, good. So in the end, I had a couple of issues. Because we only have 4 hours to do this cake, you have to use the fridge and freezer a lot. And I think what had happened was I threw my cake in the freezer to cool, and I think that moisture in the cake condensed. This is our theory. We talk about it, this stuff like this all the time, but it was a little gloggy or a little gummy. I think, if I don't recall, that was what they said. And so there were problems with my cake, not, really drastic problems, but with the texture and stuff. They liked the lemon curd and the cherry filling, but moreover, it was the decoration. I was super rushed. I have glacé lemons on top, which are lemons boiled in sugar water and glassed, made into glass. And then the decoration, 3/4 of the way through, when I only had 20 minutes left to decorate, I ran out of icing and I had to make more, which really, it took me 10 minutes to make the icing going 100 miles an hour. And only another 10 minutes left to finish decorating. And you could tell it wasn't my finest work. I'm usually pretty polished, and it was kind of a train wreck. And so by that time I was tired. I had a couple glitches with that toaster pastry. My oven had shut off. I touched the control panel with my body and my oven had shut off. So when I went to put my toaster pastries in, it was only at 200 and it had to be 400 degrees. So I had to crank the heat. So some of my bottoms of my toaster pastries were burnt or well done, not burnt, but they were uneven. And then that's one of the things they look for, is even bakes and stuff like that. And then this cake was a little gloggy. It wasn't polished, finished. Now, on any other week, that and my second place finish on the technical would have got me through any other week. But this was one of the weeks where everybody in the tent was super strong. So my dear friend Andrew, who had blips throughout the whole series up to this point, he had 2 stellar bakes. Loic did really well. Everybody excelled on their cake, funny enough, except for Camilla and I. And where we had been stronger throughout, we faltered. So in the end, what happened was I got sent home, and I wasn't heartbroken. So you got this thing, that's the slide that says time to go home. Yep. I wasn't super heartbroken because I was ready. And one of the story producers, Meredith, told me they can tell when people are ready to go home because they kind of lose that spark, and they saw it that day. And I did mention in my mic, I said, you guys, it's okay. I'm ready to go home. And I don't know if the producers heard that or whatever, but in the end, that's what happened. So I wasn't overly heartbroken. I could see my dogs again and be back, and I could plan my camping trips and stuff like that. But funny thing is, I mentioned I was a quilter. I had entered one of my quilts in the national juried show and was accepted. And this happened the exact same time as the taping of the show. And as I was coming back on the day that I got kicked off the show, they were announcing the jury award winners at the national juried show. And I got permission to take my phone so that I could watch the Facebook Live. And so we were in the van on the 401 or wherever, I don't remember what, but they said, okay, in the improv modern category, 3rd place is such and such. And I knew I was getting a placement ribbon. And I said, oh, I don't want to be 3rd. I don't want to be 3rd. I want 1st, darn it. I want 1st. They announced this name, and then they said 2nd place is, and I just said, oh, come on, I just want 1st. I don't want to be 2nd. And they announced my name. So in the end, I got 2nd place for this quilt called Fractured. And it has to do with the fractured landscape of Alberta. There's commentary on environmentalism. There's also commentary on what COVID did to us, fracturing our connections and all of that. So I got 2nd place, and I'll tell you, I was more upset about Doesn't this sound ridiculous? I was more upset about getting second and not first in that than I was going home. And I know that just sounds, maybe, I don't know. It sounds ridiculous. What a spoiled brat. Anyway, so these are the bakes that never were. These are week 6. So I went home and I watched, well, I didn't watch, I kept in touch with my friends. And these are some of the bakes that never made it on the show. These are concepts. So this was my spice week. This was supposed to be the grain elevator in Leduc. And I think I might end up by doing this for next Christmas or something, maybe put it in our local library or something, I don't know. So you can see the grain elevator there and a maquette pattern that was, that's on the hotel floor room of the show. And then we're going to patisserie week. Here's my religieuse. And finally, my showstopper that we never made it to. And it was a tribute to all who were displaced or affected by forest fires. And it was supposed to have sound and special effects. So I would have really liked to do that. And I was trying to get approval for that when I got kicked off the show. But they didn't quite know what to do with me because nobody had ever asked for sound and special effects on the show. And I thought, what? Nobody's ever asked for that? It just seems logical that if you want to do a showstopper, you incorporate other effects, but whatever. And as long as you make the cake really well and decorate it really well. But that was my showstopper. So maybe I'll end up by doing that again someday. I don't know, whoever. But my 3 dear friends, Loic and Candace and Camilla, went through to the finale. And I have to say, I anticipated Loic to make it to the finale all along from the first moment that I met him. And he was, oh, my dog is barking. He was kind of my adopted son. I really connected with his mom too when I got to meet her, and he's just incredibly creative, can pivot on a moment's notice, and a bit messy though, for my liking, but that's our dear Loic. And in the end, he won, and I would have been happy with anybody winning, because everybody was so talented and had such skill and are such great people. But I am happy that he got that accolade, and in the end, I am very happy. He's come to visit me a couple times, and we've gotten together with bakers. So you can see the picture of the group of us and some stuff. I've had a few projects on the go. I did something for City of Edmonton, developed a tourtière recipe, tourtière puffs, appetizers. So you can see my Instagram if you want to follow me. I've got stuff on there, baking stuff that I post all the time. It's at Kathy Bakes Up a Storm. And you can see the whole thing now. But I just wanted to thank all the people that helped me, my family and my close group of friends that were my tasting party, my critique panel. And and I kind of wanted to dedicate, my dad passed away during COVID, not of COVID, but and I was on the show like a year and a half later, and he would have loved it. He would have loved to taste everything, and he was an old farmer who would have just dug into that, and so I dedicated each bake to him. But Trevor, do you see this thing that says follow me on Instagram?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so all things foodie and baking, I have 2 Instagram accounts, and I decided to keep them separate. And then for all things art, quilting, and lifestyle, there's that. Facebook, I reserved my Facebook for closer. I only have 200 and some people on Facebook, and a lot of people have come and requested to be Facebook friends. So if I don't have a closer connection with you, don't be put off that I don't accept your friend request, but everybody's welcome on Instagram. So I think that is it. Can we get back to, I'm going to get out of this, Trevor, and back to Teams?
Sure. Yep. I remember turning your camera back on.
Okay. Uh,
You're still sharing your screen.
there.
Yep. There we go. You're back.
I'm back.
Yeah. That
All
was
right.
very cool. So while we're chatting here for a second, anyone that's still watching, if you want to use the Q&A to ask, throw in some questions and stuff, by all means, go ahead and do that. I have a couple of things that I wanted to ask about you while I'm doing that. So if you have questions, please put that in. We'll spread that along. But that was a great presentation. I mean, it answered a lot of the questions that I had, because when, it's kind of cool watching you. And I mean, you and I have known each other for a while. And,
Almost 30 years.
yeah, I know.
From the first week.
Yeah, exactly. Was that your first week at McEwen?
Probably because it was fine art and you were our publicist.
Yeah. So yeah. And I remember all when I heard that you were doing, I remember like you did a lot of photography and I knew you were doing some other stuff. And so, and I've mentioned this to a lot of people, the coolest part of when they show the introduction of you is watching you with the welder's mask and doing the welding stuff. And I thought, oh yeah, I can see Kathy doing that. And how is she going to apply those welding skills to her baking? And my wife and I were talking about, like, the way you just kind of direct the welding gun, you would do that with your icing gun or whatever. But
icing the piping bag.
That's it. Yes. Obviously I don't do a lot of baking.
Yeah. Well, that last bake, which is a gravity defying cake, I was going to weld the structure that would support it. But again, I got kicked off, so I never got to do that. But yeah, all those skills, like a lot of that stuff is transferable. The painting skills, all of that, right? Like it's funny how those things make it. Yeah.
Well, and I was so impressed with like the fine work that you're doing, right? Because I think you used to do calligraphy as well, right?
No.
Okay, maybe it's fine art painting, but I mean
in stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, some of the work that you were doing with that, it's like, oh my God, like I could see you doing that painting, but never thought of applying that to like, baking or, cookie or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I just, what was it like? Because you mentioned, I remember in one of the clips you mentioned something, how you felt like the parental, because of the age difference and everyone else and stuff like that. So what kind of things happened that made you feel like, I mean, did you give them like good advice? Were they coming to you because of your experience? Was it because maybe you were a little more calm about things than they were? Like what kind of things made you feel more like that than anything else?
It's funny because there's a dynamic, right? Like these are very exuberant, I would say. I would consider myself an introvert. I love being alone in quiet, this kind of thing. And I found it really hard to start with because we're always together. We're in a cottage in the downtime, like on the shooting days when we're on location, they put you in this little cottage, which is the size of a living room. And there's couches and everybody's just chattering. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here because I can't keep my brain clear. And, but they have conversations and stuff. And because you're so close and there's a comfort level. And so they were really, talking about some personal stuff. And then there'd be a lull in the conversation because I wouldn't offer things. I wouldn't say anything. And then they'd all stop and look at me and say, what do you think? And it was just like, oh my gosh, so it was almost like a parent thing. I don't know. I just thought, or I would just, when things would go off the rail, I would say, okay, you guys just stand back, take a deep breath, and so I think it was just a little bit of that, I don't know. And also too, when you're a little bit older, the music, in the van, I always sat in the front seat because I said, I'm not going to fold myself up into an origami to get in the back. You young kids can go in the back. And so I would just hear everything from the back and music would come on and they'd be singing along and I'd go like, this isn't music, so I noticed things like that. It was like, oh, must be getting old. But yeah, so it was kind of funny. Yeah.
Um, hang on a second. What was the other question I wanted? So you mentioned that you spent a lot of your off time in the cabin, and you mentioned that, I mean, it sounded like you didn't get a chance to go home at all. So you left after week 5. Did you go home then, and they flew you back for the finale kind of
Yes.
thing? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So the shooting schedule is a few days on, a day off here and there, and then a day on, and then 3 days off, and that kind of thing. And when you are off the show, when you're booted off, you do get to return home, and you continue on with your life. And then when they film the finale, for me, it was like 3 weeks later, they brought me back. They brought everybody back, kind of like for a reunion and the final thing. And so it was kind of nice that we got to see each other again. And that was just for 3 days. Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you get the time off, and being an introvert, you want the peace and quiet. What did you do to center yourself?
Stayed in the hotel room.
Okay.
We weren't really supposed to leave the hotel room because what if something happened to one of us? Like if we got hit by a bus or something.
Yes.
So they're quite protective of us, right? So we weren't supposed to leave, but they said you can go walking around in the park and stuff, like there's park areas nearby. And some of the people got together, they went shopping, they went out for supper and stuff like that. And I just said, no, I'm just going to chill. So that's what I did. Yeah.
And so sorry.
No, I valued that time where there was nothing.
Right. I can really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see what time we're at. I've got like 2 minutes left. So I just wanted to say one of the really emotional moments was that pierogi moment with the judge. Like it was, I mean, I remember Shell and I watching that, and then, it was like, oh, it's as good as my mom's. And then just like you said, she teared up, she choked up. It was such a moving moment. And, I mean, not that you planned it or anything like that, but I thought, oh my God, Kathy must just love that feeling because, I mean, like you said, the baking and stuff that you've done with your family, and that is so close to that, and to have that shared experience, that must have been pretty cool for you.
It was cool. My credo in life, and this has always been, always will be, food is incredibly important to me. It's how I show love. And I said to the producers when I went in for my interview in the audition, I said, food is how I show love. That was the way my mother showed love. That's the way all of my relatives, my grandmother, like it's something you prepare, you invest your time in. So it's not just sustenance. And also because I want to present something beautiful or appetizing, I kind of go over the top with it sometimes, right? But I regularly took baking into work. And like on Fridays, I would walk around with a big platter of cupcakes. And if somebody wasn't at their desk, I'd put it at their desk, and they kind of knew who it was from and stuff like that. But I think for a lot of people, food has connotation and about history, about family, about tradition, about all of that. And you can walk into somebody's house and you smell something and you think of somebody, you think of a memory. Turkey cooking, you think of comfort, maybe you think of this, you think of that. And so it's kind of hard not to draw kind of parallels between what you see, taste, to memory. And I think it's incredibly powerful. And so that was a very wonderful compliment to what I did. And I was so happy. And I turned around and walked back with my thing, and everybody was crying, especially Andrew. God bless him. I love him to bits. But everybody was emotional because that struck a chord with all of the bakers, really, and the judges too. So, yeah. That was
excellent. Excellent. So that's our time. I don't see any other questions and stuff. So thank you very much for taking the time to do this. And,
no, thank you so much for everybody tuning in. I appreciate it. And I loved the messages of support from everybody. And if you have not checked out the show, you can still watch it on CBC Gem. You can download it to your iPad or your phone, and you can watch it through CBC Gem, and it doesn't cost anything. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Excellent. And I think in the description, I'll make sure to include the links to that. Like
Thank
I did with
you.
yeah, not a problem. Okay, so for everybody else, I'm going to stop the recording now. And then if you want to hang on up, then I will flip some switches and then everyone can come on camera and talk, and then we can have an open discussion. Thanks again, Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you.